Recently, while I was watching the latest and greatest Annie Austin video where he speculated on what each of the major cities in Skyrim felt like in relation to temperature, wind speed, and a few other parameters, it got me thinking, where would I live in Skyrim? And while pondering this, my mind quickly moved on to, well, where would I live in Tamriel? And then, inevitably, to this little map game I've spent hundreds of hours of my life staring at and the various worlds created and brought to it by its wonderful modders. In that spirit, I thought today it could be fun to go through a few of my favorite modded worlds in CK3, such as Elder Kings 2, Realms in Exile, After the End, and so on, and do some honest speculation as to where I would live based on those same parameters. So sit back, grab a drink or a snack, and enjoy some map gamer rambling as we try to decipher where I, Soul Tomato, would live in these modded worlds. And to kick things off right away, I think we should start in Tamriel since that's where he was in the video. Obviously he was in Skyrim, and I've thought a bit about this. I wanted to do some background thinking. I love Morrowind, I love the game. I would not want to live there. I'm assuming in this scenario that I'm me. I'm just like a normal dude who would probably look like a Nord in most respects, or like an Imperial. I don't think that they would appreciate me living here very much. Black Marsh is also out. I think it's just Argonians. I don't think anybody else even lives there, really. Elsewhere is out, Valenwood is probably out, Alinor is out, the Yakuta is out, leaving me really only 4 choices that I would realistically live in, which would be High Rock, Skyrim, Hammerfell, Cyrodiil, and then Orgrimmar, I guess would also be out because they would only let orcs live there, but anyway, unless I became an orc friend, but I'm rambling now. So realistically, I thought about this. I would not live in Skyrim. This is like a medieval period. Obviously there's magic and stuff, but it's very cold up here. Even the warmest city, which would be Riften, realistically, is going to be like fall, like autumnal all the time. It's not what I'm looking for. High Rock is a good choice, but I fear it would probably have the same problem. Up here it's quite frigid. Down here would probably be much more temperate. I would just prefer if the temperature was, a little more averaged out. It's okay if they have some winters, but I would prefer that they were mild because I don't have indoor heating. I would just have to cut a lot of wood. It's a lot of things to worry about. Therefore, that gives me Hammerfell or Cyrodiil. And realistically, I don't think I'd want to live in Hammerfell. I've lived in the desert a few different times, and it's not all desert, of course. There's a bunch of other things going on there. But I don't know enough about the inner workings of its geography and its people to feel comfortable living there. I feel like I could definitely live on the border, like up here somewhere would actually probably not be too bad. But I've thought about this, and I would live in Cyrodiil. And so I've taken the liberty of blowing up Cyrodiil now. I've gotten rid of those little borders for us. So there's a couple different places in Cyrodiil I think I would like to live. Leyawiin is definitely one of them. Beautiful city here, southern coast of Cyrodiil, well, in this little bay right here, right next to Elsewhere. And then Black Marsh. It's a bit tropical, so this would be a cool spot. I'm sure the temperatures are lovely all the time. I would assume most of Cyrodiil, if we're going by the lore, it's very tropical, it's very jungly, right? That would mean that the inner heart of it is going to be probably a little too humid for me, for my taste. I probably wouldn't enjoy that very much. There's some beautiful places like Shadenhall. I loved it in Oblivion, it looks gorgeous. I don't know if it would look like that in the old lore, so it's hard to say. But in the way it looks in Oblivion, I would definitely probably also pick Shadenhall. It's just a beautiful, like hilly, tree covered place. But realistically, and I knew what I was going to pick as soon as I started speculating Tamriel as a whole, I knew I was going to pick Anvil. I knew I would come down to Anvil, and I would come on down, and we would live here in the beautiful harbor city of Anvil. Anvil's it's this beautiful, like, very Mediterranean coastal city. You have obviously the Isle of Stirk you could also live on, which would be quite nice, I'm sure. But you just get this lovely year-round constant temperature. It's probably pretty hot in the summertime, I would assume like 90 degrees. But in the fall, in the winter, you're probably looking at a nice 50, 60, 70 degrees. This is Fahrenheit, of course. And it would be a lovely place to live. You have the ocean, you have, even the inland isn't that bad. It's like a savanna, or it's like, palm trees. It's literally just like California. I love that area in real life, and I think that would be a no-brainer. I would definitely try to live in Anvil. Plus, I wouldn't look too different from the people that live there anyway, and it's a trade city, so all sorts of people live there, so I'd still get the Tamrielic experience of getting to meet and interact with these various races and peoples, while also being more accepted than I would be if I lived in, say, Morrowind, where they would definitely, be like, you're an outlander, you don't belong here, or Skyrim, where it would be really cold, and I probably would be accepted because I'm just a tall white dude, but, I think Anvil is the choice for me, and this is basically how I'm going to be speculating it for the rest of these videos. My scientific method is just me going through these areas and being like, how does it feel? Anvil would definitely be the nicest, I think. It'd be nice, Mediterranean, very warm, very comfortable. And for our next one, we have the wonderful world of Aegot. There's various different places, obviously, that you could live. You could not only live in Westeros, but you could also live in Essos. Essos is enormous. It's harder to speculate where I would want to live in Essos because we don't have the whole map yet. So I'm just going to say we're going to exclude them for now. Realistically, I'd probably live in like Bravos up here because it sounds like it's a really beautiful city. I'm a city dweller myself, so I love cities. So realistically, I would live in a city. So let's keep that in mind when I'm selecting these places. If it's not something that you would expect, it's because I prefer to live in a city around a bunch of people with a lot of things going on. It's just what I like. Therefore, the north, automatically out. The only place that I would maybe live is White Harbor, but realistically, no. And the Iron Islands, no. It sounds like it sucks to live there, to be honest with you. The Vale is definitely a maybe. It's a possibility. The Riverlands, probably not, only because it's such an unstable place. The Westerlands would probably be lovely. Honestly, most of the places in Westeros are probably pretty nice to live. And so and more realistically, have to pick which coastal trade city that I would prefer to live in. And I have a couple. I could see myself, for example, living in like Goldtown, right? So the thing about the Vale is you have a lot of natural protection from enemies if on the chance that the realm goes to, absolute total shit, which it does every once in a while. You have this natural mountainous border. Like this is nearly impassable. The murder gate is like over here. It's nigh impenetrable, as is your capital stronghold. So you'd be pretty safe. And the thing about the Vale is it's not all mountains and snow and, just rugged peaks. It has all of this lush, beautiful, just temperate forests and farmland that people live and thrive in. And I think that often gets overlooked when talking about the Vale. So you have what are objectively probably some of the best knights in the Seven Kingdoms protecting you, or you belong to them, so you're in this prestigious group. And you also have, this beautiful trade city, which is, I think, one of the biggest ports in Westeros, if I'm not mistaken, because it takes a lot of trade from Essos, probably even from Bravos up here. I'm sure that they get a bunch of trade from them, and I'm sure it comes in through Goldtown. So if you wanted to, if you were like, I really want to stretch my legs, it would probably not be outside the realm of possibility to take a ship from Goldtown and to go over there. So this is a strong contender for me. I'm going to narrow all these down to one, by the way. I just think Goldtown would be a nice one. It's beautiful. We still have the mountains. I like having a variety of landscapes, although realistically, I don't know if you'd see many mountains from this area, but you also have Runestone close by, another big port, another like ancestral home of a pretty famous house, the Royce. So that's an option for sure. I don't think I'd want to live in King's Landing. Realistically, this is probably too big in a medieval sense, like too messy. It's from what we've seen depicted and heard talk about it, a lot of it is quite unpleasant to live in, especially if you're of a poorer stock, which, that's going to be inevitable anyway. But I think this is probably a bit too much, which I will not say for another city, but we're going to exclude King's Landing. I don't think I'd want to live there. I would definitely not want to live in the Stormlands. I would definitely not want to live near Storm's End. I don't think the entirety of the place is covered in storms all the time. The Bay of Storms probably is, but realistically, all of this is not going crazy. I do think I wouldn't mind living on Evenfall. Again, it's like this beautiful island, wonderful temperature all the time, and you have this very strong House Tarth controlling the island. The only issue, obviously, that you have is that you'd have Mirish pirates every once in a while trying to test your boundaries, trying to test your goods. So the occasional invasion could put off my desire to live there. And that's kind of the same thing that I have thought about for the Reach, because realistically, I love the Reach. I think it'd be a pleasant place to live, but you have the shields here to protect against the Iron Islands. And I don't know if I would really want to be dealing with that. The only places that I think that they would never really try to bother are like the Citadel. But even then, we've seen in the Game of Thrones books that's not true. I'm pretty sure that they control the Arbor now at this point. I think we're the most recent book. It's been a long time since I've read it. But obviously the Arbor would be probably, an absolutely spectacular place to live. You could work in the fields. You could be a renowned, winer or whatever, just a wine presser. I don't know. This would probably be like the most idyllic place, I think, to live, because it's very much focused on its trade. It's very much focused on its craft. I think that's something I could sink my teeth into. It's probably beautiful, an absolutely stunning place to live. The Citadel is also, or rather Old Town is probably also that way. Old Town is massive. It's the biggest city in Westeros. So this one is a strong contender. I think, honestly, I'd be hard-pressed not to pick one of these two. My big problem is that we know the Iron Islands. They do go raiding, right? And they will raid the Westerlands, the North, the Riverlands on occasion. They'll raid the Reach. It doesn't sound too great to me. There is a great alternative here in Dorne. Sunspear is probably, realistically, a absolutely stunningly beautiful place. It's a very interesting culture, the Dornish. So if you live in Dorne, you're obviously like fiercely independent in that way that you are Dornish. But I don't think that they're that unaccepting of outsiders, especially in Sunspear, where it would be like a major, this huge, beautiful, unbelievably beautiful port city. And this is going to have the same thing going on that Anvil does, where it's going to be more Mediterranean, very dry though, not tropical. Unlike Anvil, probably would be a little tropical. This would be a lot more like a, you know, like a Middle Eastern coastal city. I can't think of an example off the top of my head for whatever reason, but this, or like maybe like Alexandria. We'll just use that as an example, right? Just beautiful, has a lot of access to trade. You obviously have the stepstones here, but I don't think that Dorne has as much of an issue with pirates, especially not in Sunspear. Sunspear is a strong contender for me. I think, though, it's hard to say where I would realistically want to live. I fear that a lot of my anxiety about invasions or raiding is probably unfounded. Like, most often, that is not going to affect me personally. Realistically, I would probably say, I'm going to have to do more than one. I would say probably the Arbor in the Reach, because, you know, I would just be making wine. I would just be chilling. I would just be sitting outside, tending my grapes. Maybe I'd charter a ship. Maybe I would have a ship of my own because my winery is famous. I don't know. If it's me, though, realistically, I would just be a worker. But I'd be enjoying perfect temperature all the time. So there's that. Old Town, potentially, if I wanted to be like a maester, I guess I would live there. I probably wouldn't do that, though. Sunspear is a strong contender as well. I would assume I'd be some sort of craftsman here. I have some tactile, hands-on skills that I could probably offer them for trade. Who knows? But I think that this would be a beautiful place to live. You would never get bored. There's probably always something interesting here. I think the cultural difference would probably get to me a couple times. You know, they would definitely be a little less welcoming of me specifically, probably. But I don't know. I mean, I've been in the Middle East a bunch, and they're usually a very welcoming people, very friendly. And so that would, I don't think that would be a factor as much as I'm maybe giving it. And then we have Gulltown. I think Gulltown, or like even White Harbor, probably would be fine. But White Harbor's so far north. Nobody's going to bother you in White Harbor, though. This is probably like a beautiful city. But it's just, the north is so spread out. I feel like you're kind of isolated up there. Whereas at least with Gulltown, you still have that semblance of civilization outside of yourself, where you could charter a ship from Gulltown to Braavos, and it wouldn't take you, you know, a million years. It probably wouldn't from White Harbor either. But I don't know. I think if I was going to narrow it down, though, I do think it would probably be the Arbor. I think that I just prefer this sort of climate. If me, like the person that I am right now, even though I don't live in an area like this at all, but I have in the past, I think that the Arbor in the Reach in general, anywhere would probably be pleasant to live. Even like right outside of Highgarden, just in the fields, would be fine. It would be pleasant. It would just be a good place to live. I think that that's realistically what I would pick. And even if the Iron Islands were to come raiding, you know, at least I would have had a good life, right? And next up, we have everybody's favorite world of Middle-earth. I love Middle-earth. I love Lord of the Rings. I'm a huge Tolkien fan, so I have speculated on this way more than is probably humanly necessary. And obviously, I think we need to get this out of the way. Everyone's going to probably say the Shire, that they would like to live. But realistically, you're not going to live in the Shire because you're not a hobbit. I'm not a hobbit. I'm like 6'5" with shoes on. This is not going to happen for me. Now, I could live among hobbits. This doesn't exclude me. I'd have to live in Bree. The only thing is the Bree folk seem to be really mistrusting of other people. They're just sort of like, you know, very isolated, very like in their way country folk. I'm not really that kind of guy. I'm very gregarious. I love like meeting people and like learning about them. And I just don't feel like this would fit my personal, you know, alignment. It just, if that's the way to word that, as idyllic and beautiful as it undoubtedly is, it just wouldn't be for me. So we're going to, no Shire. I'm sorry. I apologize. Obviously, Rohan, I love the idea of like living among the horse lords, but the thatch huts, they don't really do it for me. I got to be real with you. I think they live a much more rustic, hard life than I would want to live, which probably sounds stupid. But I don't want to be a farmer. I don't want to be a horse farmer. I actually don't really like horses that much in person. I don't trust them. So I wouldn't be living here. I would not, there's not much to do besides be a farmer or be a horse farmer. Like, it's their whole thing. And I don't want to do either of those things. So Rohan is out. Obviously, I don't want to live in Mordor. I would not live in any of these areas because it's an absolute cluster. Down here is harder to say because we don't know a lot of the lore. Bellicar would not be that bad, though. But I'm going to exclude them because there's just not enough information for me to go off of from my own knowledge. The same thing with the Easterlings. Dorwinian wouldn't probably be too bad either, but I just don't know enough about it to be definitive. Which inevitably, I'm sure you can guess, there's two places that I would realistically probably live, and that's Gondor or up here actually in Dale. And I'm going to start with Gondor first. I wouldn't probably live in the Bjornings. It's probably not that bad here though, but you have a lot of goblin raids coming down from the Misty Mountains. I would not appreciate this. Then again, you know, dangers around every corner here in Middle-earth, so I guess it just depends on what you want to do. Realistically though, I think that there's like 2 cities that I would want to live near or live around. In Gondor, like one of the coastal cities, realistically, is probably what I would pick, like either Dol Amroth, or you even have like Peligir down here, like along the Anduin, or even just Minas Tirith, like near Osgiliath. Obviously, you have. I'm going to assume that this is a post-Sauron world or pre-War of the Ring. I am not going to be involved in that, hopefully, and if I am, I would like to be on the side of Gondor. I think that they have realistically the best, most technologically advanced life in Middle-earth for humans at this time. So I think that realistically, this is where I would live. I think that it would fit what I enjoy. I probably would have to guess that I'd live like near Minas Tirith or like Peligir or something like that. Like these 2 areas are probably calling to me. But again, I think that because of the threat, the possibility that I would have to be directly involved with Mordor being right there, you know, it's literally right there. Maybe I wouldn't pick that by default. Like if they were asking me and they told me, I'm going to teleport you to Middle-earth, but I'm not going to tell you when, I would not say Gondor on the off chance that Sauron is literally storming the gates of Minas Tirith as we speak, you know. Therefore, and this isn't a great argument because this happens here too, but therefore, because I love the difference of, you know, races and difference of cultures, I would probably live in Dale, right by Erebor. And the reason for that is, you know, it's obvious. You have this very rich trade relationship with the city of Erebor. You're going to be meeting dwarves. You're going to be befriending them. I love dwarves. I think that they're awesome. I mean, at least how they're portrayed in Lord of the Rings, they're very proud, a little stubborn, a little stern, but, you know, quite gregarious, really, if you get down to it. And I think that that fits me in a lot of respects. I think Dale has a wonderful history. You know, they took back their city, they took back the mountain from Smog. You know, that's a wonderful sentiment anyway. You have Lake Town over here if you wanted to live something like a little different. I realistically would live in the city nearest Erebor, just be like a trader, an apprentice for some sort of like a blacksmith or something, you never know. That would be cool. And then you would also have the added bonus of maybe like a dwarf would make fun of your axe or something that you made, and you could get some tips on how to make it better. It's just, you're going to get a lot more trade, a lot more people coming in and out. Various different peoples are going to come through here. Whereas a lot of these places, they don't move around too much. You're not going to see a lot of that in Erebor even. You would see that in Minas Tirith, sure, and like all of the coastal cities in Gondor, since they do trade. But I think Dale, realistically, is where I would pick, which is surprising to me because when I set out to do this, I was like, maybe I would do Gondor. It's a lot harder when you really sit down to think about what you like personally. But I think for me, the things that I like to see, the wide varieties of people, an influx of trade, the possibility to do like a craft in a big area with a lot of people in different, you know, races, cultures, and things like that. I think Dale fits that bill perfectly. You know, I had to do it. You know, I had to come to after the end. You know, I'd have to speculate where I was going to live in a post-apocalyptic North and South America. And there's a couple places that I've actually thought about. So I have lived in various places throughout the United States, specifically because I'm an American. And I've also been to most of the states in the U.S. I think it's like 43 at this point. And so I've seen them at various stages of the year in different, you know, places in different regions. You know, there's like various aspects to consider. Also the fact that this is literally a post-apocalyptic neo-feudal world. You're gonna have to really contend with a lot of things. Like you're not gonna have heating, for example. So even though I've lived in Alaska, I wouldn't want to do that when there's no heating in my house. Even though, again, you know, they have ways to heat your house, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to do all that stuff too much, right? Like there's like 9 months of winter in Anchorage. Okay, it is not a place that I recommend living if you don't like the winter that much, which I don't. So there's a couple problems because I think automatically I would pick like Brazil because it just makes the most sense. It is easily the biggest, most powerful empire at the time of the game start, and you would be well protected, well defended, and I would live in like Rio or something. The only problem is, I'm sure this is shocking to you, I don't speak Brazilian Portuguese. I don't speak Spanish. I can speak like broken Spanish, but I couldn't live in any of these places. I don't know their language, and I'm assuming that this is me going there right now. I'm sure I could learn, but it's not going to be very easy to learn, especially with obviously they all have their evolved languages anyway, but we'll assume that I get to speak one of these languages. I don't think it would be one of these. I don't think I'd be able to do it. I feel like I wouldn't fit in very well. So unfortunately, I have to exclude South America, although for all of my Brazilian viewers, and there are quite a few of you, I would pick Brazil right away if I knew Portuguese. Like even if I just knew Brazilian Portuguese right now, I would say Brazil. It would be inevitably better than anywhere else on this map besides maybe California, which California is definitely going to be a strong contender for me right now out the gate. So then we have to consider places that I've already lived. I'm from Illinois. I do think living in Illinois, especially near the papacy, would not be that bad. Well, the papacy's in Missouri, but whatever. You know, like there's a strong Catholic body here, and I think that that would probably be to my benefit. It's amazing that that still exists in this world. And I know the temperatures in this area, they have very mild, assuming there's been no catastrophic environmental catastrophe. They have normal 3-month seasons. You know, they have a very mild, pleasant year normally. The winters can be kind of cold, especially if you're closer to like Lake Michigan, but realistically not that bad. It's the same thing here in Allegheny, where I currently live right now. I live in the Kingdom of Allegheny, just so you know. And it's very mild, it's very pleasant. I love the borders of Appalachia. I love the hills of this area. Realistically, if I had to pick between these two, and I've lived in other places too, but I probably wouldn't live there, I would probably say Allegheny, only because I'm very familiar with how the seasons are here, and they are more mild than they are down in like Chicagoland. Even if the city wasn't as big, I probably would say like Pittsburgh, just because I like this city a lot. I love it, in fact. It's the most home I've ever felt anywhere I've ever lived. And so I would, of course, say Pittsburgh would be one of my choices. And I'm going to have two for this one just because I got to give Pittsburgh, my city of black and gold, a little shout out here. Mwah, give a little kiss. Probably not be that bad to live in, like, you know, New York City, right? You'd have everything that I'm looking for, right? It's a big trade city. They do have harsh winters down there, but it's not going to be the worst. The same thing with Washington, like Washington, D.C. It is a beautiful city. They have wonderful temperatures. It's like really well situated. Has a lot of people coming in and out of it. The presidency still exists in this time period, so you are going to see a variety of people from all over the country, which is something that I appreciate, as I've said many times. Not going to see that in Pittsburgh. Realistically, you're going to see maybe some industrialists, but here you're going to see a bigger flow of people here, and in like Philly, and then in New York up here. And so those are great contenders too. I would definitely prefer East Coast. The only other place I think that I would live, and I would not live anywhere in the Midwest, like in this area, in the Middle West or in the South, I would not do it. It's way too humid down here. I don't think it'd even be that bad. Like New Orleans is a total cluster right now, but New Orleans is a wonderful, beautiful, beautiful city. It has so much culture and so much history. It's one of the best cities to visit in the U.S. in my opinion. Besides, you know, being the murder capital of the South, but that's besides the point. I think California would be a huge, like very strong contender. I don't love San Francisco in real life, but it's definitely going to be different inevitably 600 years in the future. And they have a very strong border, very strong government. I think any of these coastal cities would probably be great. I love San Diego, so maybe I'd go down there. I don't know. Unfortunately, I just don't think that I would live in a place like this. Like, I love California, and I've been many, many times. My fiance is from California, and I just don't think that I would be that beneficial. I don't think that I'd have that benefit. But I was not talking about California when I said that. What I was talking about actually is up here near Seattle or the Vancouver area. I love the Pacific Northwest, and I loved Alaska, but you get sort of the same thing, the same vibe down here, but the temperatures and the seasons are a lot more mild. You don't really get snow in the winter, and you don't really get that harsh of, like, you know, these visceral seasonal changes going on down here. It's, you know, I think you have coniferous firs is most of what you're going to see here. A lot of mountains, a lot of things to do. I think Vancouver also has palm trees along the coast, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember from when I was there. This is a perfect area to live. It's absolutely beautiful. They literally worship the earth here. I mean, there's nothing more that you could want. You have two huge port cities within realistically, like, you could probably walk to them within a day or two of each other. Right? Like, if we're assuming that I have to hoof it, you know, I'm sure you could get to them within like a day or something, or even just take a boat and get there. Like, this would be probably the most ideal place to live, I think, in this world for me. And so I would pick either Vancouver or Seattle. I have been to both of them. They're beautiful, wonderful cities. Even going down to Portland, if you wanted to, down in Oregon, wouldn't be that bad. But I just love this area. And I'm not surprised that I said this, because I thought about this earlier. And I've kind of thought about moving up here many times. It's obviously really expensive right now, but it wouldn't be probably then. And you'd get to live, you know, close to two major cities and just have a lot of camaraderie, a lot of the potential to go back and forth and maybe see the rest of the world too, which is something that's important to me. So that's what I would pick. Probably Vancouver, realistically. I think it's a little bit nicer temperature-wise, a little less rainy than Seattle, so that's probably what I would pick. And finally, we're here in the world of Eris, and I did not want to do this one because this place sucks. I would not want to live here at all, but Godherja is inevitably one of the biggest mods that I've ever played on this channel. It helped make this channel. I would be remiss if the 5th and final world that we're exploring was not its, and that's unfortunate for me because I'm going to have a bad time. Now, realistically, again, I try to think about this from an objective standpoint. I would not live anywhere over here. I don't think that it would fit. I would probably be mistaken for an Agionist, and they're having a bad time right now. Everybody is. Realistically, the Fog Eaters are going to come, and they're going to sweep over the world and kill everybody, so that's not a great time to start. I don't think that I would be an Adversarian either. I am a big Rome hater, and most of the time I've hated on them so many times in different videos, so I would not want to be an Adversarian, even in the shattered realm of Adversaria. I know it's not Rome. It's like more like Byzantine, a bunch of other elements. Just shut up. I don't think I would live there. I don't think I would live here. Realistically, there's like, this is going to be the shortest one because I've thought about this a bit, and there's like one place I'd want to live. Right, realistically, and it is actually Chivali, and not only is it Chivali, it's actually an independent subsect of Chivali, and that is Petty Gisred or Grand Gisred. One of these two sort of like republic-like cities that are independent from Chivali as a whole. So they have an accord that they made with Chivali that they're not allowed to attack them. They're basically allowed to remain independent, but I think they pay like a tribute to them or something, or like they just have a trade agreement. I can't exactly remember the lore, but if I'm not mistaken, Petty Gisred in particular, or Petty Gisredi, is the most wealthy city. I think it's like at the highest development in the mod. It's also like one of the most wealthy cities in the entire world. Again, going off of everything that I've repeatedly said, I want a place that has pretty moderate temperatures. Obviously, you have the liches up here. That is not necessarily a problem for them. They don't generally come this far. So, normally I can just like let them deal with it. And you have the potential for trade all over the world, right? They're going to be trading with everybody. You have a very prosperous, very powerful, in fact, port city, port republic. Really, it's a bunch of different places. It's not just Petty Gisred, the capital city. It's also all these other coastal trade towns. So I could live in any one of those, and I would be well off. I would be able to see various people from around the world, and I would be relatively safe because again, you have like this natural border of these mountains here. Grand Gisredi is right here as well, and they're quite powerful. And I think for as much as they don't like Petty Gisred, I don't think they'd let anybody attack them. I would hope, right? And the world of Eris sucks so bad. You would not want to live here, but if I had to, if the Godherja devs all gathered together and said, you have to live in this world for 1 year or we will kill you, I would probably say, Petty Gisred, just transport me into the game, onto the streets, this big Venetian, like very much like Italian Republic style city, and I think I'd be fine for a year. I'm assuming that they're going to let me learn the language, otherwise I'm screwed, but this doesn't look so bad, right? I mean, look at it. Otherwise, I don't know where you would want to live. Like, Chivali is probably maybe one of the only places that would not suck to live, especially in this current climate. Maybe over here, but this is about to have a huge civil war. There's like all kinds of crazy stuff. The magic in Godherja is insane. The Mamurama wouldn't be so bad. I'm a big Wardenite fan. I think they're pretty chill, although they're kind of also on the the edge of collapse, so it's kind of problematic. I'm assuming living in one of these places wouldn't be too bad. It'd be kind of a boring existence, and I would like at least some semblance of civilization, some life, and I think you'd get that with Petty and Grand Gisred. And that's going to be it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this little speculation video. I was not sure how long this was going to be, but it actually ended up being longer than I expected. It was quite a lot of fun speculating and just like envisioning where I would want to live in these various worlds, and I hope that you had a good time. Again, thank you to Any Austin for their video and for giving me this idea, even if indirectly. And yeah, that's it for this one. As always, I want to thank my channel members for their continued support, and in particular my Paladin tier members. Those are Dwayne the Rock Lobster, Zora Luigi, Dunyal, Valadar, Lackland, Grayzo, Candriff, Shadow King Drakon, and Titus. You guys are awesome. If you'd like to become a channel member, if you've ever considered becoming a channel member, you can do so through the membership tab. Nights and above get videos 2 to 3 days early, depending on how I'm feeling. Usually it's 3 days early if it's like the weekend, but if it's during the week, sometimes it just depends. But again, that's it for me. As always, I'm Soul. This has been Where I Would Live in Modded CK3, and I will happily see you in the next one.